Welcome to the Maine Basketball Rankings Podcast. I am your host, basketball data nerd Lucas McNally. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Vertical Raise, one of the largest fundraising platforms in the country, now proudly helping teams, clubs, and programs across Maine. With Vertical Raise, your team can raise more money in less time. That's always good. No selling, no collecting, just results. From new uniforms and better equipment to tournament trips and every fundraising need in between, like maybe shot clocks eventually. Vertical Raise has a variety of campaigns to make it happen. Your main reps, Christie and DChase, are both coaches who know what it takes to run a great program at any sport, club, or grade level, and they understand how important fundraising is to make it happen. So it's worth 10 minutes of your time to learn more. Schedule a call or email today and see how Vertical Raise can take your fundraising to the next level. Okay, so today's show, we've got a good one for you. Travis Lee from Channel 8 is here. He's a legend. Well, you don't need me to introduce Travis Lee to you. You know Travis. He's been doing this for 25 years now. It's him and Dave Eade are just the gold standard of sports broadcasting in the state of Maine. So I got Travis in here. We talked about a bunch of stuff. We talked about football. We talked about broadcasting and journalism and how to be an actual journalist as opposed to just, someone hyping people on Instagram. We talked about football. We talked about basketball. It's really great stuff. So we got a couple of things coming up here on the podcast schedule. We're going to obviously start previewing basketball a little bit. We're going to do, this is all tentative, by the way. None of it's 100% locked down, but it's mostly locked down. We're going to do the wins draft again. That was a lot of fun last year. Then we're going to do, I think, a Mr. and Miss Basketball draft, which should be interesting. We're going to do we're running a preseason poll on the website that you can go to. Anybody can do it. Fans, players, coaches, whoever. And then Jay Baines and I are going to react in real time to the results of the preseason poll. So get in there, vote for your team, vote against your opponent, your bitter rivals, and we'll have some fun. We'll see what the consensus is around the state of who the top teams are in every class in the state. Before we get to Travis, I just want to tell a fun story. I went to 2 games this last weekend. Neither of them were close. I went to Mount Ararat and Yarmouth. In Topsom. It was pretty windy. I was excited to see Iggy McGrath. I'd already seen Mount Ararat. I wanted to see Iggy McGrath because I'd heard good things. And really, that's a great name. Iggy McGrath is a fantastic name for a football player. And really, I was surprised Mount Ararat dominated that game. It was pretty windy, so throwing was going to be a little trickier. But Mount Ararat's big guy just absolutely dominated the game, both sides of the ball. And Mount Ararat won that one in a walk. Met some nice people, some nice Mount Ararat people I had never met before who were fans of the podcast and stuff. So that's always fun. Always nice to have people come up and say nice things to me instead of just yelling at me because I'm underrating their team or something. And then Saturday, I had to go to the Madomic Old Town game, 8-9 prelim. Old Town sort of came back on Madomic in the first game of the season. Madomic was up 18, I think, at one point. And it was even windier. And so you thought, well, maybe, this could be a game. And it was not. Madomic won 62-6. It was 40-6 at halftime. So just an absolute obliteration. But I wanted to tell a fun story from it. So we're into JV minutes deep in the fourth quarter. And I'm still filming like I do for highlights on the phone. Because, hey, the JVs might do something cool, and that should be celebrated. One of the JVs for Madomic had like an 80-yard touchdown run. That's got to be the highlight of his year, 100%. So Old Town still got, I think they still have their starters in, and they're still trying to throw the ball into the wind. Not going great. 2 or 3 plays in a row, a Madomic defender drops the interception. It one's a flat out drop. One's he's probably not going to catch that, but it hits him, it hits his hands, and they're like, oh, and then, they're the JVs, they're in those JV minutes, they desperately want interception. So then there's a slight delay for some reason, like not long, like maybe a minute, I think they're moving the chains or something, or I don't know what they're doing, something, maybe someone got cramped, not important. This kid, cornerback for Madomic, who's the last play is on the other far side of the field, and I'm on the Madomic sideline. And he sort of looks at me. He's like, man, they better not be throwing at me because I'm going to intercept that. It's basically your classic 14-year-old swagger of this small kid with skinny arms. And, he's not a big kid. He's a JV for a reason. He's probably a sophomore. I think he's a sophomore. But utmost confidence. He's like, I'm going to pick this ball up. I'm like, okay, dude. All right. Good luck. Next play, roll the tape. Come on. That is Max McCabe. I believe he's a sophomore for Madomic Valley. And after the game, he looks over me, points to me from like 15 feet away. He's like, I called my shot. I told you I would do that. I was like, yes, you did. Congratulations. He was very hyped. And, that's really one of the better things about doing this is interacting with kids in a fun way like this. And, we're all just there it's a football game. We're there to have fun and we're there to have a good time. And, it's a 62-6. Doesn't have to be, deadly serious when it's 62-6. But I thought that was a fun story to pass along. Okay. So, we got news, we got stuff coming up. So you want to subscribe if you're watching this on Facebook, you just like it on Facebook. Go to YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, whatever else. iHeartRadio, is that still a thing? Google Podcasts is dead. But yeah, wherever you consume podcasts, YouTube is a great one to do. They're all great. And, yeah, we'll have a bunch of good stuff lined up. Vertical Rays is going to be along with us for, it looks like, a while. And one of them, Christie, has got a big couple football games coming up here. He's the Camden Hills head coach. So, they're hoping to make a run at this thing. So we'll see. Anyway, without further delay, let's go to my conversation with the great Travis Lee. My guest today has been coming to your living room for the last 25 years, and now he's coming to us from his living room. Travis Lee is here.
Happy to be here, Lucas.
All right. This is take 2. We've had a little bit of technical difficulties. We're powering through. So 25 years is crazy because I remember when you were the new guy on Channel 8 because we didn't call it by the call signs. We called it Channel 8. And now you and David are this old guard of the establishment.
Dinosaurs. We're real fossils, living fossils, Lucas. That's what we are. Not only are we old, but we're in a business that has evolved quite a bit since we first got into it.
Yeah, and since the last 6 months, it evolves every really 6 months. It seems
Something
to be. It's craziness.
But then again, like when I started, there weren't cool things like podcasts.
That's true.
So,
yeah, you'd get like a 2-minute segment with somebody, and that was it. You'd go to their place and record a thing and package it together. Well, I guess you're still doing that, but there was no long form.
Yeah.
So, what you see a lot of kids now, the last couple of years, they're like on sidelines with doing something, Instagram, whatever. What's the advice you would give to someone who's just getting started and wants to get into sports journalism in some form, considering how much it's changed?
Oh boy, there's a lot of things wrapped up into that. First of all, if you're really into journalism and you're working the Instagram thing, you can't be a fanboy, right?
Right.
Journalism has its bylaws, and one of them is there's no cheering, got to be unbiased, got to be objective. So if you do want to make the transition into more, traditional journalism, I wouldn't even say traditional journalism. Journalism, by definition, you do need to find some objectivity to it. But I would just say experiment and be yourself. I was coming of age in this business in the early mid '90s when Sports Center had really exploded with all of their shows and their platforms. It was the era of calling highlights at the desk. And I had always loved, the idea of doing that. I was in college. I went to Ithaca College. I was broadcasting there in college. I originally wanted to be the play-by-play guy for the Boston Red Sox, uh, but I fell in love with anchoring, I just tried to be myself. If you're not boom goes the dynamite, don't be boom goes the dynamite. Find your own thing,
Right.
hone it, work on it, and always check another thing, check your work. Sometimes for some people it's hard to like go back and look at their work. It's like, oh, I don't like, it's hard. Um, but look at your work, see what you're your best critic probably, because you'll notice things because you were in the moment. Go look at your work and iron out the things that you need to get better at, and talk to people. Get feedback from people.
Yeah, there's a saying in like I've been doing a lot of research into like podcasting and trying to like figure out how to do this, and there's a saying there of just be 1% better every day. And that's a lot of that is goes into checking your work and just trying to find things you can improve.
Sounds Did Bill Belichick write that?
He did not, but it might be cribbed from him in some way. It's pretty good though. It would be a Bill Belichick thing. And so speaking of going back, one thing I found in the Googling of you is WMTW put up a slideshow of 20 things you don't know about Travis Lee, which I'm going to put in the show notes. And the haircuts are really great. I have to say,
A lot of
they was
different hair.
surprised. It's a lot of different types of hair. There was a thing where you were at Ithaca where it was kind of feathered in the front, which was definitely of an era.
With some
So
sideburns too, I think.
with some sideburns.
Heavy
Yep.
sideburns.
There
Yeah.
was some Little League photos that I'm sure your mother supplied for that
Bowl cut era.
project.
Bowl cut.
The bowl cut era. Yeah. So if people really want to just get a trip down memory lane, I highly recommend it.
All right. That's what the show notes are for.
That's what the show notes are for. So one thing, this is actually, you mentioned, not being, I forget what you just called it, but not being like a AAU hype man as a journalist. How do you balance, because you also don't, because you're covering high school students a lot, you also don't want to be like, oh, this quarterback, he sucks, he's terrible, in the way that you might with, let's say, Mac Jones, for example.
Yeah.
How do you balance being objective and with the fact that it's kids, but then also not wanting to be trying to be their best friend and just be like everybody's amazing?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, there isn't a school system in the state that pays me. I get paid by WMTW, so it's pretty easy for me to stay objective. But at the same time, I've always taken the feel, the perspective, and have the feeling that, we are guests covering these events, and you know, your high school athletics or teen years, can not always go the way you want them to go for a lot of people. I don't think that your failures need to be, uh, broadcast per se.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think like you used it, a quarterback as an example. You know, I've always taken the policy. I don't mention a quarterback's name when he throws an interception. You could go look back at 25 years of my broadcasting. We might say, the Jayhawks quarterback. That the Jayhawks driving down the field, go into the air, and it's picked off by, you know, Raymond Claiborne of Levitt or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of protect. There's ways you can protect some kids, I think, and that's kind of our philosophy. And my philosophy is, you can still make the broadcast sound like it's the broadcast of an NFL game, but not hang kids out to dry. And I think that's um, when you get the blowout games, you're looking for maybe one positive play from the team that gets blown out to throw it in there sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're just trying to, to have some understanding, I think, of what's going on.
So it's not the running back fumbled; it's the linebacker forced the fumble.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's um, that's exactly something that we would say. Yeah, someone recovers the fumble, or the defense gets a turnover for sure.
And then the last thing you want to do is just be like, hyping is probably the easiest way to describe it, where you see some of these like AAU accounts, and that was part of like a lot of people that I know, their hesitation with the whole Cooper and Ace thing is it was all this early, it was all this AAU hype stuff, and you're like, I don't know, like this is all the same. I don't know what to think of this until they got, into high school, and you're like, oh, okay, no, this is legit.
Yeah. That's a different like like there were enough
Yeah.
people that like I talked to and had connections with that like I trusted that were like, no, this is for real,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to Cooper or Ace, Um, but you're right, the hype, you've got to cut through the hype, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to know who's working for who. Um, that's
Yep.
that's a big part of it. Who's working for who? So, a lot of people get a lot of publicity, but they also are not that isn't always earned, but a lot of times you've got to look at the source, right? It's just like any other interpretation that you use as a journalist. You're looking at the source, and you have to make a determination. Uh, yeah, the hype stuff doesn't do much for me.
Yeah, me either. And you also got to like double check it. I had a situation this fall where I was at a football game and someone's like, "Oh, this team's going to has this great freshman coming in," because I'd heard, this is a good freshman class for basketball. And then I saw that coach of that team later that day and I was like, "Hey, I heard you have like a really good freshman coming." He goes, "No. No, I mean, we've got some freshmen coming in, but they're not going to start." So they
Yeah,
just, they just had the wrong team.
yeah, no, I think that's the life that if you cover high school basketball in Maine, you live. Uh, and it's funny that I always use this example, right? Everybody talks about great freshmen, right? And oh, this guy's going to be an impact guy. This guy's, and I do think that there's going to be some of those guys this year. There's some really good freshmen coming in, but
Mm-hmm.
I always like to look back and think, Dustin Cole was a 4-year first team all SMAA player,
Yeah.
right? That was an impact freshman right away. You know, 6 points a game, as a role player is not what Dustin Cole was. Um,
Right. Right.
there's a difference between an impact freshman who's really an impact freshman. Ali Clement, basketball player at Macaulay, won 4 championships, was one of the best players for all 4 years right away. That was like a real star freshman. They don't come along very often, but every year you hear about 30 or 40 of them, right? Of
Right.
the hype
Right.
machine. So um, it all has to be measured, I think.
Cindy Blodgett was an impact freshman, for
There you
example.
go.
Like
That's
that
another
was a
good.
pretty good one. Yeah. All right, so let's overreact some to football because we're battling your phone battery here. Let's start with the game we both saw this weekend. With eight man large school
Little
South.
stat. Yeah.
We need better names for this. Mount Ararat looked great against Yarmouth
Yeah,
in the wind.
I think Yarmouth is, one of the stronger programs this year. And certainly if Yarmouth had had a better day, I wouldn't have been surprised if Yarmouth won and they moved on and played or maybe won a state championship.
Hmm.
Mount Ararat just dominated, the line of scrimmage, and Yarmouth has a great line. So that kind of shows you what they bring to the table. Uh, Reyes, one of their linemen, forgot his first name, is pound for pound as
Adrian?
good a player in 8-man football. I mean, he's just unblockable, and when he's on the offensive side of the ball, they run behind him a lot. He's
They
just
throw him touchdown passes too.
caught a touchdown pass. Yeah, that's a good team, and I think it's fun when you've got a program like that, Frank True's group, that you kind of know what they're going to do, and they know that they're preparing for that, and they don't care. They're going to do what they do, and they're going to do it, in their minds better and win the game.
Yeah, Reyes was in that backfield of Yarmouth's more than their running back was, it seemed like. Like every play, he was just hassling McGrath. McGrath was just running for his life most of it. And he made some really nice throws. And I actually messed with how elusive he was back there because there's a lot of quarterbacks in this state who would have been sacked 8, 9 times in that game. And he was able to escape time and time again.
Yeah, he has good receivers and he's a good athlete. Not surprised at all that he, was able to escape a little bit, but he had a lot of pressure. You're right.
And now, so it sort of looks like, have you seen Camden yet? Because it looks like we might be
No, you got to
getting a
tell me about him. I don't
rematch.
know. I don't know. I have
So
not.
they're
I just
good. They played in week 2 against Mount Ararat, and Mount Ararat was up at the half, and then Camden rallied in the second half. The big issue with them is last year they lost their quarterback for the tournament. So, I mean, that's a huge loss. Hollis Schwalm, and I think he's a senior now. I think that could be a really good gold ball game. And I could see that going either way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? Spruce Mountain gets to host Mount Ararat. They're still the
Right.
number 1 seed,
There's
right?
still Spruce Mountain.
And they've got some pretty athletic guys. And it's always a tough trip up there, and they're playing on a Saturday. So that'll be interesting. They're definitely gonna have a home field advantage. It's a great place to play up there in Livermore. And like I said, they've got some athletes, and it's not going to be easy for Mount Ararat at all.
Yeah, I haven't seen Spruce. I have seen, it seems like from the write-ups, I've seen half of that team play basketball. It sounds like it's a lot of basketball names that I recognize on that Spruce team, which doesn't surprise me because they've got a lot of good athletes on the basketball team.
That would be, yep, that would make sense. And they kind of had a dogfight with Yarmouth that they lost. I'm sure that they're going to be ready for this one. I'm searching for a name right here who's had a pretty special year. I can't find it, but you know what I'm saying. They've got
Yeah.
enough athletes.
Do you find the names get
That's
harder
not good
as you get
podcasting
older?
right there. Sorry.
Do you find the names get harder as you get older? Because I'm finding the names are getting harder to remember,
Oh,
or maybe there's just so
yeah.
many of them.
Paying my bills gets harder. I forget which ones to pay. It's doesn't the whole deal. Bills, names, places.
All of it.
Yeah.
Time comes for us all. It's
undefeated.
So then
time is undefeated.
Time is undefeated. Then in the small schools, so we've got Dexter beat Orono, which is a pretty big win.
That's a great story.
What
a
a
great
fall
football year.
Dexter's having.
Yeah.
Jeez, I didn't know there was a possibility of getting money for third place. I thought that was
I
great.
did not know that either. Yeah.
So they cleared 75,000 for that contest, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can fix that press box.
Maybe Mr. Alfond will chip in a little bit more. A little bit, match it maybe.
Maybe. I mean, that's like the easiest PR move in the state right now is for somebody with deep pockets to write them a check.
Good call.
And fund a thing. So they will play this week. They will play Stearns. That's going to be some tough sledding. Stearns, if not for OOB, Stearns would be the favorite there, I would think.
I would think so, yeah. We still could get that rematch, right?
We could get that rematch. That was a week 3 game.
It was early. It was definitely early.
Pretty early. It was the same week as Gardner Wells because I remember talking to Mike Mandel about it in the parking lot at Gardner. So OOB, that was a 2-point game at the half, and then OOB ran away with it in the second half. And so here, let me ask you an 8-man question. When do we go away from big school, small school, and we have 8-man classes? Where, do we restructure this a little bit? Does it need to be restructured a little bit?
No, I think that I think if you do that, you've resigned yourself to not trying to help these programs get to 11-man.
Mm-hmm.
That was the intention originally was let's try and save football at schools that don't have a big population and help the schools rehabilitate themselves that are trying to get, back to 11-man.
Really,
if you introduce a third class, I think you're just basically resigning yourself that you're accepting that everybody's going to, that 8-man is what it is,
Well, it seems like there's some schools like OOB that are perfectly happy to stay in 8-man and maybe even prefer it. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I think Old Orchard's enrollment, though, dictates that in some regards, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty small school. And it always kind of makes me, I always want to ask myself, I'm like, I've got to check the geography of how big a town Old Orchard is, right? Because it's, 9 miles from Portland. And you're like, how is there such a small school but it's
And
just a small town. There is not a lot of land there for people to live in. It's got to be what it is.
and it's so tourist driven
Yeah,
that how many full-time residents do you have?
there you go. Yep, those
You
two
know,
things combined.
because we go
Uh,
there every summer, and I mean, that's got to be 75% tourism housing, something like that. You know, I don't know. Um, all right, so let's move on to we'll go to 11 man. Let's start with Class D. Do you get to see a lot of Class D? Because there's a lot
yeah,
of that
enough.
seems to be
I've seen
northern.
more D than 8-man this year.
Okay, all right. Let's
I
see
was a
who's
little I
left
was a
in
little
D.
surprised Poland lost. I thought
Yeah,
Poland had a good chance, to maybe even upset some people. Damon Martin, really dynamic quarterback for them. But good for them. They had a good year. Winning record, had a good playoff seeding. That they're disappointed that they got upset.
but what a win for Morse! Like that's a huge win for Morse.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Darling can coach. He's a good coach. And
Yeah,
they'll try and keep it going. Now that's like another one of those programs we're just kind of talking about. Like they were an 8-man. Now they've kind of rehabbed up to D, and good for them.
yeah, and so they're gonna play Oak Hill, right? Yeah, Oak Hill beat Freeport
Oak
12
Hill
to
came back
10.
to beat Freeport. Yeah. And Oak Hill was considered, I think, maybe, they were considered, if not the favorite, 1A or 1B with Winthrop coming into the year. And Oak Hill's, played some good football lately.
Yeah, so Winthrop is still alive. There, so Oak Hill at Winthrop this week. Um, yeah, Winthrop's been
Is it Oak
quite
Hill at
good.
Winthrop,
I think so. I think it's Oak Hill at Winthrop.
or is it Deergo? No, maybe you're right. I don't have the matchups in front of me.
I had it. I wrote them
Deergo must
down, but I can't read my
Deergo must
handwriting.
host Morse then. Yes, you're right.
Deergo. Yeah, Deergo Morse. Yep. I keep forgetting how many the part where some people are in a quarterfinal and some people are in a regional final and some people are in a semifinal is throwing me. I keep
Oh, totally.
try to keep it all straight in my head. Yeah, Morse at Deergo. There we go. And then Oak Hill at Winthrop, and they're in the semifinals there.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then the winner of that bracket is going to get Marana Cook is at John Bapps, and then Madison is at Winslow.
And John Bapps is undefeated.
John Bapps is undefeated and absolutely trounced Winslow in the regular season.
Yeah.
So those
John
are the
Bapps
top
gotta
two
cook it.
seeds. Yeah, they look pretty much unstoppable, except they almost lost. I think in week 8 they won by 1 against somebody.
Okay.
So
Where is somebody in the state? What's their enrollment?
it's under 100. They'll be starting their basketball season a week early, and I think it's in Aroostook County. It's one of those unorganized townships.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's 6 guys there and 12 moose. It's a very small town. Let's go to C. How are you enjoying C? Because the consensus is that C is a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's been pretty good. It's been pretty good, and I think it's been the most competitive top to bottom, right? Where you've
Mm-hmm.
um, you have an 8-0 Greeley team that looks really awesome. Luke Piper's an awesome quarterback.
Oh yeah.
A great line that stepped up. Great running game. Like they look really tough. Levitt battled them early in the year. It's pretty much a one possession game at Greeley, and
Mm-hmm.
Levitt's gotten a lot better. So those are two teams that look pretty good. Herman certainly has a case, for being undefeated. If not for maybe a strange call at the end of their game at Levitt. Although that was, not at the end of the game at Levitt, but a strange call that favored Levitt. And you don't know how the rest of that game would have played out. So it's kind of hard, that early in the game if there was a call that kind of changed the direction of things. But Herman certainly is up in the conversation. You never count Wells out. Gardner had a great year. Gardner beat some
Mm-hmm.
teams. Um, I can't remember who I'm leaving out here.
Foxcroft.
Foxcroft. Yep, Foxcroft. They're going to have some tough sledding this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Going to Levitt, but and then Madomic, which played better at the end of the year. It looks like.
Yeah. Well, they got their running back, which helps because
Yep.
they lost Jaden Ruiz for the first 3 weeks of the season to a hand injury, and then I mean they looked great against Old Town on Saturday, 62-6, which and it was that was over very quickly. And I have been spending a little bit of time with my Madamic people warning them about how good Greeley is. It's a lot
Yeah,
of like, no, they're really, really good. So just be prepared for that. If when
yeah,
you
they
go
can
down,
beat
that
you
it's going to be and
offensively, just real diversified. They
mhm,
could run and win a game. They could pass and win a game.
yeah, and so I was talking to some Madama people like, how can they beat Greeley? And I'm like, I mean, I think you got to get a lead, you got to get a break or two. The turnover, the ball that bounces your way, and then it's football. You hope for the best.
Yeah, they would have to probably dominate the line of scrimmage
Hmm.
um, to be able to kind of tip the balance. Because skill guys at Greeley are really strong, and a lot of
Yeah,
them are underclassmen.
yeah. Benjamin Kyles had, I think, maybe the best catch I've seen all year against, was it Levitt? No, it was the other game I saw where he fought through a defensive pass interference, like a flagrant defensive pass interference, and somehow caught the ball in the end zone. And it was just like, oh my gosh, how did he even come up with that? That's like, and it turned the game, really. They would have been down 14-7 going into the half, and then suddenly there was right at the end of the half, suddenly they're tied, and then they ran away with it in the second half. So you got to stop those guys, which is going to be tricky.
Yep, yep. But no, C has been a lot of fun, and I wouldn't be surprised if you get an upset this weekend. Changes the balance and the seedings
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And yeah, there are a number of teams that could win that division.
Yeah, I mean Wells and Gardner, they're going to have that rematch of that overtime game that they had, whatever week that was. That could be a classic in the 4-5. Uh, Foxcroft could maybe give Levitt more than they can handle. Nokomis Herman could be interesting. There's a lot of different ways that could shake out.
Yeah, I think didn't Nokomis play Herman pretty tight not too long,
I,
like maybe week
I think
7.
I think so, yeah. And then they just trounced Madomic in the last game of the season. So Nokomis is, I feel like, the team no one's talking about in this class. And I'm not sure why, but they've been there the whole time.
They have the
They've just
NBA
been
put them
hang
there, right?
yeah, they've just been hanging out and just sort of chugging along. All right, let's go to B. B North looks less interesting. It's Coney and Friends, with Parker Moran's just having an incredible year and continues to have an incredible year.
Yeah, putting up a lot of stats, and um, they run the ball. I mean, like they are. I don't. Where's the weakness?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's gotten close to them, have they? I don't think so.
Um, Oxford Hills.
Oxford Hills, right.
They were at Oxford Hills, and I think that was a relatively close game.
Yeah. So then the South, though, the South is way more interesting. I think maybe the game of the week is Falmouth and Kennebunk.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah,
So
I
you
think
got the rematch.
Kennybunk thought that they were going to beat Falmouth in the state championship last year.
Yep.
Um, so I think they were a little surprised. Falmouth was super physical. They were the much better team in that state championship game. I think Falmouth thought that they were going to beat Kennybunk in the opener this year.
Yeah.
Kennybunk was more physical and the better team that night. So do the math. I think the more
Mhm.
physical team, on Friday is going to win this one.
And from what I saw Falmouth late in the year against Freiburg, and then just the scores they've been putting up. Nobody's scoring on them in like the last like 4 weeks.
Yeah, they're cooking. They're
Yeah,
cooking.
it's been really impressive. They shut down Freiburg completely. I think they had 46 yards total in that game, and that's a pretty good Freiburg offense.
Yeah, and that's without Eli Bush, who was a all-state player last year, who's been hurt, and I don't think he's coming back. And they've made it work. They've made it work with the athletes they have, and they're tough. They are tough. They're if they can get the offense cranking, that's a team that could play Coney in 2 weeks.
That is if they can get by Westbrook, who is one of the That is that one of the better stories of the
Oh, it's
football
awesome.
season,
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, for in my business, it's all about stories, right? And
right?
you know, I it's tough. Like football history is hard to find out there.
Hmm.
It's kind of a lot of hearsay. And then again, we've only really had, MPA state championships for 40 or 50 years, even though football is the oldest sport in Maine, right?
Hmm.
Playing it since, for 130 years. Uh, but it doesn't seem like they've ever played for a regional championship, according to like what people are saying. So
That's crazy.
if they were able to get by, um, who
Then
did they have this
Marshwood,
week? Marshwood,
Marshwood.
yeah. They were able to get by Marshwood. Um, and Marshwood, Westbrook went down week one, kind of announced that they are, you know, a contender by beating Marshwood week one, and they've done very little um, to dissuade anyone from there. Their only losses to Falmouth, and there
Hmm.
were there were times that they were the better team in that game. They just couldn't score. Uh, so it's shaping up to be a good Final Four in that region.
Is it kind of a version of the Noble basketball story 2 years ago when they were in their first, like they hadn't been to the semifinals since like the 70s or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good um, that's a good analogy. Um, I'm trying to think like, yeah, that's a good analogy.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
you know,
And
but
so then,
it's hard to tell. Does Noble keep winning in basketball? Is this just the beginning for Westbrook?
mhm.
Um, Coach Johnson, like, is this the beginning? This his kids love playing for him. And maybe they really get rolling here. That's one
Yeah,
of the neat things that you get is the bounce you get when you have a successful season, especially in football where you have a lot of people that don't want to play for a losing team. You
right.
know, everybody wants to play for a winner, like especially in football. Maybe they get a bounce from this, and you get some guys playing that might not have played if it wasn't for the success that this group has had.
It's always interesting to me when a team that's not been good for a while is suddenly good, and it's the question of, because they always say they've fixed their feeder program or whatever, but then it's always the question of, is this the start of a new stretch of good, or did you just have like three good seniors come through at once,
Mhm.
and you just had this little blip? So it'll be interesting with Noble, especially in basketball, with Westbrook in football, a couple other programs. Is this actually going to be sustainable?
Someone might have said that about Bonnie Eagle football 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. You never know. It's just sometimes it's the real thing, and sometimes it's just a blip, and then they're back down in the basement in 3 years. All right. Speaking of Bonnie Eagle, let's move to A. It sure looks like this is Bonnie Eagle and Thornton Academy for the state championship, based on what we've seen. I'm guessing you've seen both of these teams a
For the
bunch
regional championship,
for
maybe.
the regional champion, and then the regional. But the everybody says this is actually the state championship game.
If they get there, yeah. I mean, Noble beat Bonnie Eagle in the playoffs a year ago. Um,
True.
and um, so you got to get there. You got to get there. And Noble's had a nice season. I don't think a lot of people thought that Noble was going to be, um, as good as they've been. Because Jameer Rose was such a dynamic player last year.
Hmm.
But they've been excellent. They've had a good year. Um, I did have one Class A coach tell me like before the season, and I'll have to remind him when I run into him next that like he was right. Noble was a pretty darn good team. So Bon Eagle's
Yeah.
going to have the work cut out for him there. And South Portland has a ton of talent. They've got some really special players. Um, you know, Maybe they put it together and can upset Thornton. Um, Thornton's just they just maul you. you know, they're
Yeah.
they're so physical. They've got a great line. Connor Ayub is, got to be one of the front runners for the Fitzpatrick. I think
Hmm. I
him
would
and
think so.
Cordell Jones are up there. But Ayub is just a 300-yard game last week or 2 weeks ago. I mean, how do you do that? It's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh, he was incredible in that game too. he kept churning. Like every time you thought he was down, he would pick up another 6 yards. It was like
Yeah.
really, really impressive performance. So then on the other side, we have Portland is playing. Where did my notes go? Portland Deering, which
Portland Deering.
Portland Deering in a playoff game, which apparently doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. You're right. I know it's happened before, but it's been a long time. Um, so that'll be interesting. Portland kind of handled Deering the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Deering had some injuries, you know. Um, so if they're healthy, it'll be interesting to see how Deering can do. Brendan Scully's an awesome coach. He's going to have them ready to play. Uh, Cordell Jones looked really good last week. Throwing the ball, that he can run the ball,
Yeah.
threw the ball real well. Um, so that'll be interesting. And then you get a rematch, Oxford Hills and Bangor. They just played last week, so it's like, don't tear up the scouting report.
How much? So that's always an interesting thing because they were kind of locked into their seeds, I think, a little bit. Like you obviously are not going to throw the kitchen sink in the
Yeah, you're the
regular
math
season
guy,
game.
man. You're the math guy. Like you didn't have the Crabtrees figured out ahead of time.
I I I've been deferring to Andrew Hart on the Crabtrees because the heels I can do in my head and I can just sort of go, no, I don't think you can make it quite, and I can sort of ballpark it even. But the Crabtrees throw me with the up and down of it all and the calculation of it. But obviously you're not gonna, if you think you're gonna play this team in the next round in the playoffs next week, you're not gonna show them much at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe not one of your special plays, but
Right.
still gonna. I think. I don't think you can I think a lot of people overthink this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're just kids playing a game. Go try and win the game, and then go try and win it next week.
Right.
Whatever it takes.
I have had a
And I think,
coach.
and I think, like in my experience, the best coaches kind of have that philosophy. You see it
Mm-hmm.
in different sports. They're not, except in baseball. Like sometimes, you won't throw your best pitcher against the team.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, um, and some programs were like, we don't care. You can see our guy 2 or 3 times. We don't think you're going to hit him.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've had coaches say to me like, you sometimes you forget that these are like 17-year-old kids, and 17-year-old kids do weird things, and are not don't mentally process the game like say a professional athlete would, and
yeah,
sometimes
or the
it's really
perspective of
simple.
an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes that gets lost because they're just kids and they're just out there reacting to things, and it doesn't matter if they've seen the opponent 6 times, they're just going to do the same thing.
Mhm.
All right, so I wanted to get a little bit of basketball. So last year you were the person who first said to me, hey, watch out for this Biddeford girls team. And so I know because you coach, a lot of people maybe don't know this because it's not in the 20 things slideshow of you that you coach fall ball and do a lot of work with youth programs coaching down in it's Yarmouth, right? So who are the teams that we maybe are not seeing yet, that we're not thinking of as being breakout teams this coming season?
Um, Geez, breakout teams. That's a tough one. Uh,
Is there not a Biddeford? Oh my gosh, watch out for them.
yeah. You know, um, Let me think here. I think that the storyline that I'm looking at here is just, the regrouping of Class A in the South and what that looks like when you could have a playoff in the South that has for boys, you know, Wyndham, which has been the king, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've got, a couple really great players coming back, leading they're in their senior class, AJ Moody and Tyree James. you know, you've got a Portland team that really looks loaded. You know,
Really?
um,
Okay.
Lucas Gage is just, you know, he's had a really good career and he's still got 1 year left, right? He's a really good player and they've got some awesome complementary parts around him. Um, Thornton Academy is going to be really good. Same kind of story. I don't know if they have a star, but they've got a lot of really good players. Um, South Portland's going to be there with Jackson, Darius Johnson.
Hmm.
A couple of their freshmen might help. They've got some good guys back from last year. Um, that team's going to be stacked. That's four really good teams right there. And I'm not even mentioning Chevrolet. Chevrolet is going to be good.
Yeah,
Um,
Chevrolet will just always be there, it seems.
so I think it's going to create like a war in the regular season to try and battle for seeding
Hmm.
because you're trying to stay away from a couple of those teams until you get to um, you get to the end. you
Right,
know,
right,
um,
right.
whereas in the old system, it didn't necessarily matter as much where you were for your seeding because there weren't that many teams, right?
Yeah, and then in the north, you've got Camden waiting for the winner, maybe potentially, and they've got a pretty good player up there.
In the north, yes. Though they've got a
Yeah,
couple, right?
yeah.
Because Nolan Ames and Camden are going to be strong, and then it'll be fun to see what Brewer does. Brewer is one of the smaller, you know, um, schools in the big school division, and
Hmm.
Ollie Higgins can really play, right?
Yeah,
So it's gonna be interesting, and Edward Little will have a good team. So it'll be interesting, real interesting. But I always and Lucas remind me because I've forgotten.
mhm.
Oh, is it double A or is it A? What have we rebranded all these now?
It's A, B, C, D, and then the under 100s are S.
S. Okay, all right.
S, and they start a week early, and then they start their tournament a week early. I, for some reason, I think because of
Yes.
just not enough venues.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I
But
don't know
I
if
couldn't
they're
remember
playing
if
their
we kept it as
quarterfinals.
if it was still double A, A, B, C, D, and then like the smallest were D because of that. But it's just A, B, C, D, and
And then
S.
S. For I don't know why it's called S. It's
It's gonna take a long
for
time to get used to that.
it's Joe Bailey and I were talking about this at a game. It's like, how late into the season do you think it'll be before we've all figured out where everybody is? And I was like, well, at least be Christmas, you
Yeah,
know.
I still like we were talking about old guy brain, like, you know, sometimes I remember a classification that's been gone for like 2 years, and I still think that they're in that class. So I'm always referencing it or checking it because I'm like, wait, what class are they in?
Yeah, yeah, and it's always fun when they send Miranda Cook to B North, and you're like, wait, what? Why is Miranda Cook in B? Okay, all right, sure.
They've been everywhere.
They're just bouncing around, and it was when they were doing the reclassification, it was always interesting because I saw a bunch of different plans, and it was always there was those teams on the line, and it was always interesting where they went. Like they had like the mid coast teams, Lincoln Academy, Madomic, and Oceanside. They had them everywhere. In every, it seemed like every plan I saw, there was a different place that those three teams got sent in a different configuration. And then I just said at one point, I was like, guys, you got to keep at least if you got to try to keep those teams together at least. Put them all in the same one. They don't like each other. Like, don't split them up. Send them all to the same venue at least, at minimum.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love that. You got to do your best to work the rivalries into it all.
Yeah, that was I. And they would go like, well, like Halldale is below the line, and so we got to move him here. I'm like, who cares? Move the line so you can keep the rivalries together. I don't. Is anyone like really going to be upset about that?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. It's true. It's probably the correct answer. Someone will be upset no matter what you do, and everyone wants to play 18 home games and have the tournament be in their backyard.
Yeah, no one wants to get on a bus.
No one wants to get on a bus. Yeah,
Yeah, which is ironic because I think people forget that like when you're a teenager, a bus drive doesn't matter. Like
yeah.
it's just more time with your friends. Like the bus situation is an adult thing.
Hmm.
It totally
It's
is
the
an adult thing.
it's the
Oh,
parent
we
who
got
has
to go
to
2 hours to play a state
follow the
championship
bus.
game. That's an adult problem, not a kid problem.
It's well, the problem is that you're in the car behind the bus and you've got the two younger siblings in the car for 3 hours who won't shut up. And you're like, oh my gosh. You know, I am wondering if, because you every year you see the prelim thing where they're like, Old Orchard Beach has to drive to Jonesport Beals for a prelim game. And you're like, can't we find somewhere in the middle? Can't we make a rule where if it's 100 miles,
Well,
we
Jonesport
find
Beals
an.
earned that right, though, thanks to the hill points.
I love it. And people say that. And you're like, okay, but this is the 8-9 prelim, and they're the 8 seed by half of a heel point. So I don't know if they earned that much of an advantage because someone over in Class C won a game that didn't involve either of them. you know,
Yeah, I don't know. Lucas, that's your hill to die on.
that's my hill to die on. I have lots of hills to die on. That's how I have a podcast. I have hills to die on, and you have a TV show where you're broadcasting the highlights and interviewing people. And did I see a thing where you were wearing a wig the other day?
I've done that before, yeah.
Okay.
You
Okay.
saw
I
that, right?
was I was like
Put it in the show notes.
I was scrolling through social media and I'm like, did I just see that? Have I had too much to drink? Maybe. This is what's going on here. All right. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask the question that I ask everyone here since it's your first time on the show. The MPA comes to you and they say, Travis, we are giving you unlimited power for one day. You can do whatever you want. Money is no object. Objections of other people is no object. What's the one thing you change?
Oh, yeah, I don't know if well, the one thing I'd change is I'd ask for 3 more wishes. It's the genie in the bottle question.
Yeah, the
Um,
genie in the bottle question.
I think the one that, like, I would come up with um, uh, serious rules about transferring.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of free agency in high school sports, and I don't think that's the right thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think that if you transfer, you should have to sit out a number of games. Don't totally take that off the board, but I think if you had a nominal penalty, like on an 18 game season, maybe 4 games you have to sit out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on an 8 game season, maybe it's 1 or 2. Um, but I think that just maybe weighs into an athlete or a family's decision to you know take their free agency elsewhere
Mm-hmm.
rather than staying at home. It's kind of crazy that there are kids commuting an hour to go play at another school.
Yeah.
And it happens, all over the place. That's not like it's not what the whole system is set up for, right? You're supposed to play
Right.
for the town you live in, the school you live in. Um, that's been something that I've talked about, to the MPA for 20 years.
Yeah, because
And
there's the very real.
most other states have transferring rules. You know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if you transfer, you lose a whole year in some states.
Wow. That's crazy. Because there's the very real situation where dad loses his job and he has to go get, he's loses his mill job in Millinocket, and then they move to Bangor, and well, okay, now we play for one of the Bangor schools because of you can't stay in Mill. There's no jobs in Millinocket, and but then that seems to be more the minority than it used
Yeah,
to be.
what happens more of that, or hey, all the guys I play AAU with are at this school. I'd like to go play
Mhm.
with them.
Yeah. I think 20 years ago it was dad lost his job and now it's I want to play with my AAU friends. Or hey, this program looks like they're going to have a good year and we're not. So maybe I'll go over here.
Yeah. That's why I
Or
think
you
that, like, it's just 4 games for basketball, or 3 for soccer, or 2 for football is enough to make you say, all right, that stinks that we've had this family situation where I have to move and I'm gonna have to, you know, deal with that penalty. But it also makes maybe someone think about, hey, I live in Lewiston, but I'm gonna go play basketball in wherever.
Mhm.
Um, maybe I'll stay at Lewiston so I can play a full season.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of like that. And then you could always have a hardship exemption if for like legitimate things.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's just about it. How's your phone battery holding up?
We're seconds away.
Okay. All right. Travis,
It's
thanks for
crash
doing
imminent.
this. Where can people find you other than, do you have anything to promote other than watch the news?
No, we got WMTW Channel 8. Come check us out. Late nights for your football, basketball, all your sports. And then our regular stuff on our website, WMTW.com.
Awesome. You guys do a fantastic job. And thanks for doing this.
All right, here's to another 25 more, right?
Exactly. Okay, that's the show. Thanks again to Travis for joining me and breaking down some stuff. You definitely want to go to that slideshow because the hair is immaculate in some of those pictures. Highly recommend it. It's in the show notes. And yeah, I believe that's going to do it. This has been a production of MaineBasketballRankings.com, your source for the most comprehensive coverage of Maine high school basketball from Ashland to York and everywhere in between. This podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts and a bunch of places you don't. If you enjoy this, please leave a nice review because it does help out with algorithms. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Thanks for listening.